Oh, there you are. Well, hello. Hey, Joe. You're here before me, buddy. Welcome to the show. Greetings from Lisbon. Greetings from Canada. I won't tell you specifically because somebody will dox me eventually and they'll know exactly where I am. But for now, nobody knows where I am other than Canada, Toronto area. Welcome to the show. It is August 19th, Monday, 7 o'clock. If you're here, you know. If you're not, well, you should be. A few things to talk about this week. Not all that exciting of a news week, but I got a few things that I've put together, things I want to talk about. First, we'll talk about Matthew Perry. He died, I don't know, I'm going to guess 7-8 months ago, something like that. I think earlier this year, somewhere around there. Some new information about some people that were involved in his death, or at least somewhat involved. We'll talk about that. Also, SpaceX is going to be returning to space. It's in the name. They're going to go to the radiation belt, which is actually the first time that we've done that since the Apollo missions, if you believe that. So yeah, that's going to happen. So that's kind of cool. Also, we're going to talk about how bad Kamala Harris is. Didn't really want to talk about her too much. Kind of don't want to give her any light, but pretty good article, actually. I got to give USA Today, actually. Got to give them some credit. See, it's quite a good article. Wouldn't expect that from USA Today. Maybe they're turning a new leaf. We'll talk about that. Also, Canada's population boom. Like I said, I'm from the Toronto area, and this area has boomed in the last few years. Pretty ridiculously. You'll notice if you ever try and get around anywhere in the GTA, which I do, and it's awful. So we'll talk about that, what's going on, and all that jazz. Also, Netflix has a show called Outlast. I don't know if you've caught this show. If you haven't, it's kind of like Alone meets Survivor, I guess. The premise is okay, and the execution was horrible. So we'll talk about that. And AMD. If you don't know what AMD is a chip producer, microchip producer. They're making a big move in the AI space, like everybody is trying to right now. So it might be the next sort of stock to take a look at grabbing something from. We'll take a look at that, see what their stock did today and amid the news, and we'll talk about that. Also, if you are watching the show, obviously, if you're not yet a subscriber, do subscribe to the channel. It doesn't cost you anything. Helps a small channel like this. And jump in, comment, like, share, all that stuff. The engagement helps the channel grow. If you like it, and if you don't, well, see if maybe I stand the test of time in the battle of attrition. Maybe I'll go away. Who knows? But if you don't want that to happen, help us out with the engagement. So what are you saying there, Joe? Forget the Clinton body list. Start looking the Jennifer Aniston body list. Oh, what are you saying, buddy? I think she's got a high body count. I don't know if it's the way you're intending it to be, but yeah. John Mayer was with her and he's still alive. He lost his voice for a while, but yeah. Anyways, yeah. If she's got a touch of death, that's sad. But yeah. All right. Well, excuse me. Let's go. Let's just get started, man. Let's cue up the first thing here. Sorry, let me pop this up on the browser. Transition. Here we go. So you no doubt by now know that Matthew Perry is dead. He died a little while back. I'm not sure exactly when. I talked about it on the podcast here, but there's some new information about what transpired and how he came to be in possession, or didn't say even possession, how he came to avail himself to the intoxicants that were his demise. I'm going to watch the words I say on this channel. But yeah, this article here is NBC News. Let's see what they have to say about this. So 2 doctors in the ketamine queen are charged in the overdose death of actor Matthew Perry. A web of people motivated by greed. 2 doctors, a live-in personal assistant, an acquaintance and a drug dealer known as the Ketamine Queen, conspired to provide Matthew Perry with the ketamine that caused his accidental overdose death last year, federal authorities announced Thursday. The 5 individuals have all been charged in connection with Perry's death, as his descent into ketamine addiction deepened last fall. They took advantage of the actor's vulnerable condition to enrich themselves, authorities said. They know what they were doing was wrong. They know what they were doing was risking great danger to Mr. Perry, U.S. Attorney Martin Estrada said at a news conference, but they did it anyways. In the end, these defendants were more interested in profiting off of Mr. Perry than caring for his well-being. Perry, 54, was found face down in the heated end of a pool at his Pacific Palisades home on October 28, 2023. The Los Angeles County Medical Examiner's Office attributed his death to the acute effects of ketamine, an aesthetic with psychedelic properties. According to an 18-count superseding indictment, the events leading to Perry's death began in September when a Santa Monica doctor, Salvador Plasencia, I think I said that right, learned that Perry wanted ketamine. Long known as a club drug, it's increasingly used to treat people with depression and other mental health issues, but carries serious medical risks. Plasencia reached out to another doctor, Mark Chavez of San Diego, who had owned a ketamine clinic. Soon the two physicians were discussing how much to charge Perry for the drug. This is where it gets a little bit pretty. This is awful. Doesn't look very good. Not a good look for these guys. I wonder how much this moron will pay, Plasencia said in a text message to Chavez, according to the indictment. Let's find out. Plasencia went on to provide ketamine to Perry and his assistant, Kenneth Iwamasa, 59. Plasencia repeatedly injected Perry with the drug himself and also instructed Iwamasa how to do it, the indictment says. It was like a bad movie, Plasencia wrote in a text message to Chavez, the indictment says. From September until Perry's death in late October, the doctors provided him with about 20 vials of ketamine at a price of $55,000 in cash. Yikes. In mid-October, Iwamasa sought an additional source of ketamine for his troubled boss. The indictment said he reached out to an acquaintance of Perry's, Eric Fleming, who then reached out to a major underground seller known as the Ketamine Queen. A dual U.S. and U.K. citizen who lived in North Hollywood, Jasveen Sangha, had been selling ketamine and other drugs for years, according to federal prosecutors. She knew that ketamine could be fatal. In August 2019, a man overdosed on ketamine provided by Sangha, prosecutors said. Afterward, one of the man's family members sent a text to Sangha. The ketamine you sold my brother killed him, they wrote. It's listed as the cause of death. According to prosecutors, Sangha then typed a question into Google. Can ketamine be listed as a cause of death? Well, you got to check. People don't realize that your Google searches can be checked. So she began providing the drugs to Perry through Fleming, and he coordinated the sales with Iwamasa. The indictment says, on October 28, Iwamasa injected Perry with at least 3 shots of ketamine using syringes provided by Plasencia, according to the indictment. So Sangha, 41, and Plasencia, 42, were both arrested Thursday in Southern California. They were charged with 1 count of conspiracy to distribute ketamine. Sangha was also charged with several other drug-related offenses. The judge overseeing the case agreed to allow the non-controlled substance part of Plasencia's practice to remain open if he posts a note at his office explaining the charges. It's kind of hilarious. Just got to say, hey, I got charged with some shit here, but you come on in. And seeks releases from patients stating they understand the allegations against him. After Perry's death, federal agents and detectives searched Sangha's home. They found approximately 79 vials of ketamine, 3 pounds of orange pills containing methamphetamine, hallucinogenic mushrooms, and cocaine. Jeez, she was loaded. Sangha appeared in court wearing large round glasses and a bright green baggy Nirvana t-shirt, dressing for the event. After she pled not guilty, a judge ordered her to be held without bail, saying she was a flight risk. Sangha was previously arrested in March in a separate federal drug case in which she was accused of being a large volume drug dealer. So she was released on a $100,000 bond. Iwamasa, Perry's 59-year-old assistant, pleaded guilty on August 7th to 1 count of conspiracy to distribute ketamine causing a death. He admitted to repeatedly injecting Perry with ketamine without medical training, including on the day the actor died, according to prosecutors. Chavez, 54, the physician based in San Diego, has agreed to plead guilty to 1 count of conspiracy to distribute ketamine, prosecutors said. He admitted to selling ketamine to Plasencia, according to prosecutors. And then Fleming, 54, the acquaintance who helped Perry procure ketamine, also pleaded guilty on August 8 to one count of conspiracy to distribute ketamine and one count of distribution of ketamine resulting in death. He admitted to distributing the ketamine that killed Perry, drugs that he received from Sanga, according to prosecutors. So, anyways, this just talks about how he struggled with ketamine and such. So, yeah, we know that he was obviously struggling with drugs, drug use and such. And ketamine is a pretty heavy hallucinogenic drug. So if you've built a pretty big resilience to drugs, I'm sure you got to go after a big chase like ketamine. So sad to see that basically he was taken advantage of in a down period in his life. People that were close to him, obviously a personal assistant doing things, but I don't know. I guess it would be hard to say no to a guy if you work for him and he said, "Look, I need it," but that's them's the breaks, I guess. So a little bit more. Had to know that something was going to come out about this when a high-profile guy dies from drug overdose. Somebody's going to have to hold the bag, I guess. In this case, it's these idiots. Joe says, I should have been a drug dealer. I have to look for a new job path soon, so maybe it's not too late. Oh, hey, listen, I hear there's a shortage in ketamine providers now. Might have to move to Southern California, though. Ayahuasca sounds like a psychedelic they use in the rainforest. I know, eh? It's a little weird. I agree. When I read it, I thought, that sounds like what's that? Ayahuasca? I forget what that's called. The one that they use all the time. Something like that. Ayahuasca? I don't know. Anyways. Yeah. So, at least they got a little bit of closure on that, I guess. Whatever. He was going to struggle with drugs his whole life, probably, like all these guys do. All right. On to the next thing here. Rope-a-dope-dope. All right. Rolling Stone gathers no moss. Ayahuasca. There you go, bud. Thanks, buddy. You're like my Google. Okay, here we go. So SpaceX is actually going to space, not to lower Earth orbit or Earth orbit. They're actually going to go out to the radiation belt. First time in a while. Let me read this article by our friends, the Dumpster Fire CNN. Let's see what they have to say about this. SpaceX is about to send 4 people on a wild and risky mission into the radiation belts. Here's what to know. So when billionaire Jared Isaacman self-funded a mission to orbit Earth in 2021, the project was billed as a childhood cancer fundraiser and made for an eye-popping entrance into the private space tourism world. 4-person crew of people from various backgrounds with no prior space flight experience spent 3 days orbiting Earth together in a 13-foot wide SpaceX Crew Dragon capsule. Upon his return, Isaacman imagined he likely would not go back to space again. We kind of checked every one of the boxes we set out to achieve, Isaacman told CNN, saying that Inspiration 4 showed how people from various walks of life can train for and execute a mission to orbit. I thought that maybe I wouldn't go back, that maybe the bar was sufficiently high and that this was a good time to stop. That assessment of his future spaceflight, however, did not stick. On Monday, Isaacman and 3 crewmates, including his close friend and former Air Force pilot Scott Kidd Poteet, as well as 2 SpaceX engineers, Anna Menon and Sarah Gillis, will arrive at Kennedy Space Center in Florida to prepare for the launch of a far grander, more dangerous and experimental trip to space. Here's a picture of the 4 soon to be. No, say something awful. Keep that to myself. The mission called Polaris Dawn is slated to take off no earlier than 3:30 a.m. Eastern on August 26th. While prior missions to space that were funded by wealthy business people may have conjured images of self-indulgent joyrides, Polaris Dawn is a test mission designed to push boundaries. Isaacman, Menon, Gillis, and Poteet will spend 5 days aboard a SpaceX Crew Dragon capsule that will soar to altitudes higher than any human has traveled since NASA's Apollo program ended in the 1970s. Their orbital path will extend high enough to plunge the vehicle and crew into a radiation belt, adding another element of peril to the already treacherous experience of spaceflight. This crew of private citizens will also open the hatch of their spacecraft and expose themselves to the vacuum of space, marking the first time such a feat has been attempted by non-government astronauts. During this endeavor, the astronauts will be protected solely by brand new extravehicular activity EVA suits, which SpaceX designed and developed in just 2.5 years. Hopefully, a little better than they designed the self-driving Teslas at first. So we'll see. Good job, pioneers. First announced in 2022, Polaris Dawn is the first of 3 testing and development missions under the Polaris program that Isaacman said he will jointly execute and fund alongside SpaceX. He declined to say how much this mission cost. The end goal of the Polaris program is to take the first steps towards validating technology that SpaceX will one day need if it carries humans deeper into the cosmos, including spacesuits, EVA, and life support technologies. After launch, the Polaris Dawn crew will travel into an oval-shaped orbit that extends as high as 870 miles or 1,400 kilometers from Earth. That's well into the inner band of Earth's Van Allen radiation belts, which begin at around 600 miles or 1,000 kilometers in altitude. The belts are areas where concentrations of high-energy particles that come from the sun and interact with Earth's atmosphere are trapped, creating 2 dangerous bands of radiation. So here's the image here. Shows where they normally go, where the satellites and such are. And this is the Van Allen radiation belts out there. So thanks for the illustration there, CNN. What else they got to say? I think that's about it. Yeah, this article kind of just keeps going fluffy. But that's highlighted the start of it. I mean, that's exciting. Looks like finally going back to space and not just up in the orbiting up in the lower Earth atmosphere there, where they just spend a lot of time up there. And before, NASA used to say that it wasn't possible to get past the Van Allen radiation belt. So hey, this is exciting. I think it's good news. Happy to see it happen, and maybe it's the next step towards getting people back on the moon or to the moon, depending on your perspective on whether it happened or not, and next on to Mars and maybe further. I wonder where that Tesla that was launched into space is. It's still out there, man. It's self-driving. I think it crashed already. It's going to be the first run of Cybertrucks, but with a spacesuit. Yeah. I don't know. I don't want to say anything bad because I wish these astronauts well. But hey, this is like, you can test things all you want on Earth, but things are a little different in space. So hopefully this goes well. I'd like to see them come back and everything. If it goes bad, then it could put a hamper on, on future missions and such. But so I'm all for space travel. So the faster and the more successful they can do it, the better. And I'm a big fan of Elon Musk, so I hope he gets success all the way. And who actually hopes for anybody to be hurt? Sociopaths, not me. All right. Let's get on to the next thing here. Ooh. Right. So Kamala Harris, what can you say about this woman? She's underwhelming in all ways measurable, I would say, in my opinion. I don't know why she's the presumptive nominee at this point. And yeah, it seems that the media are starting to get on board with her being quite the dumpster fire. Let me read this article here. This is a surprise article. I got to say, this is the surprise article of a lifetime. I would never expect this from USA Today. I might have to change my opinion of USA Today. Here's what they have to say. This article, Harris is awful, but left's love of identity politics means Democrats are stuck with her. Okay. I'm just going to read this whole article here. It's pretty good. President Joe Biden has finally bowed out of his re-election campaign and endorsed Vice President Kamala Harris as his successor. In doing so, Biden and his party have undermined the democratic process at every step. Democratic delegates who are pledged to Biden must now throw their weight behind Harris or risk an open convention. They must do that even though they surely realize how bad all of this looks for the party, and that has spent the past 4 years accusing Republicans of undermining the 2020 election results. They also surely know that Harris isn't the best person to represent the Democratic Party. Yet, Delegates must support Harris not only because of Biden's endorsement, but also because they're shackled by their party's radical embrace of identity politics. Like, how good of a start is that to an article? It's like crazy. It seems like they're actually trying to, really report good news and opinions. Democrats have no real choice but to back Kamala Harris. For years, the Democratic Party has championed woke identity politics. Its definition is at once obscured but obvious. Progressives have demanded that race, ethnicity, sexual orientation, and gender preferences be paramount in nearly every walk of life, from politics to higher education, corporate industries to entertainment and media. Harris, at the time of a first-term senator representing California, the most progressive state in the country, ran for the presidency in 2020. Her campaign failed spectacularly. It was so bad that she dropped out before the first primary, and even NBC News described her bid for the White House as a mess. I love how they say that, even NBC News, because they know how bad NBC News is. Yet Biden still picked her to be his vice president. She has done nothing in the past 4 years to show she is ready to be president, and the prospect of her serving as commander-in-chief is downright scary. Her policy positions are even more progressive than Biden's. That's if you can nail down what her politics are. She seems to flip-flop as much as the next slimy politician. In 2019, she was ranked the most liberal U.S. senator in America, beating out even Bernie Sanders of Vermont and Elizabeth Warren of Massachusetts. As California's Attorney General, Harris earned a reputation for being tough on crime. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but a lot of conservatives and libertarians will look down on her penchant for being unusually tough on petty crimes like marijuana possession. As vice president, it's hard to say what Harris has accomplished. In 2021, Biden assigned her the job of addressing the migrant crisis at the U.S. border with Mexico. Her efforts with that task have been almost as successful as her 2020 presidential campaign. Observers in her home state of California note that Harris has lacked consistency on key issues such as public safety. What does she stand for? What can she do? Why has none of this been a problem for her political ascension? Because Harris, the first Black, South Asian, and female president of the United States, is the trifecta of identity politics: Black, female, and liberal. Like, this article is just, I'm surprised it got past the editor, because it's just got all of it in there. It's just saying it as it is. Harris wasn't ready to be president 4 years ago. The fact she polled at 3% when she dropped out of the race in 2020 is an indication of that. But the Democratic Party paired with her with a much stronger, at the time, politician. Now she'll have to do much more on her own, but she won't because she's not capable. Democrats have been intensely focused on Donald Trump's shortcomings, real and imagined, since 2016. I'm a conservative, and I've bashed him many times, yet Democrats failed to see that their own candidate was inept and unqualified for the job until the whole world could see it on the debate stage last month. Harris deserves a large portion of the blame for this. Biden's inner circle had to have known for some time that he was unwell and unfit to serve a second term. Of course they knew. Everybody knew. It's just they're just continuing to push this can down the road. I think they just, unfortunately, this wasn't the plan. I think the plan was to get him past this election. Hopefully he would beat Trump. And then they do whatever they do at that point. It doesn't matter. As long as they got him past that point, but they came up a little short of that goal, I think. As vice president, Harris had to have known it as well. But she kept quiet and helped to keep the con going, perhaps for her own gain, but at least for the sake of her party. If Democratic convention delegates choose Harris, voters will quickly realize she is not the best choice to lead this country. She will likely fail and fail miserably. And it's as if they chose. Obviously they're going to choose her. Voters must understand this. The Democratic Party, including Vice President Harris, lied to you repeatedly, propping up a presidential candidate who had no business running for a re-election, let alone leading this country. So, yeah. So, yeah, this article was honestly, I don't know if I'm reporting on Kamala Harris being so awful or this article being just good from USA Today. Applause for USA Today. You might have made the list of actual news here on an opinion piece that wasn't that's what I'm looking for. It didn't drive a narrative. It just kind of said the truth that I think most people can see. Whether you're a never Trumper or or you're just a staunch Democrat. I think anybody with half a brain can see that Harris is not really the candidate that you should be pushing for this. But It points out, it exposes a whole ton of other things. Unfortunately, some holes in the whole ship, if you will, of what this race is actually all about. And if, why would you put somebody in there that clearly couldn't even get past the primaries in her first run, and now has done nothing and is your presumptive candidate? It's very strange. So we'll have to see how things go, I guess. We say 5 loonies say that Kamala will win. It's funny though. They're on the betting. I guess what Tim Pool talks about, that the betting lines, it looks like people are betting she's gonna win. I don't know, man. We live in a banana republic at this point. I don't know what's going on. Free and fair elections, I'm not sure, but weird stuff. That's all I can say. I don't want to say too much on here, or else I'll just get banskied. Gotta try and get my words around the bots. So, but yeah, I believe what I believe, and just can't say it on this platform. All right, okay, we're like halfway through, just blasting along. Yeah, nobody's interrupting us, Joe. It's just you and me, buddy. All right, let me get on the next one here. So if you live in Canada, or you've come to Canada regularly, you'll notice that there has been a massive population boom, especially in the GTA, the Greater Toronto area, in the last, say, 2, 3, 4 years. It's very noticeable if you live here, which I do. And here's why. I'm going to read this article. This is BlogTO. Pretty decent article here. Just gives you a lot of the facts and what's going on. So, Toronto is now the fastest growing population out of any city in the US and Canada. You think Toronto has felt busier than ever lately? You're not wrong. As a new report just named us the fastest growing metropolis across all of Canada and the US. The academic study published this month by Toronto Metropolitan University Center for Urban Research and Land Development puts the 6, just the name they call it, at the top of the list for population acceleration in 2023, outpacing any other city in almost the entire continent. According to the data, we welcomed an astounding 125,756 new people into the city center between July 1st, 2022 and July 1st, 2023, or 221,588 if you look at the GTA overall. Comparably, the largest population jump in any U.S. city proper was only 21,970 over the same time span in San Antonio, Texas, or 152,598 if you're looking at larger census metropolitan areas in the Dallas area. So here is, you're not going to be able to see it because I can't, unfortunately, I can't spread it out here, but I'll read what it actually says. Here's the top 10 cities for population growth between July 1st, 2022 and July 1st, 2023. So Toronto's on the top. As far as population growth, the year prior, it was 67,000 and change. In 2020, the span I told you, 2022 and 2023, it was 125,000. So it's nearly doubled. Calgary went from 38,000 that year to 86,000, basically. Montreal, 18,000 up to 81,000. So, geez, the growth there is huge too. Edmonton, 22,000, basically to 55,000. Winnipeg, 12,000 to 30,000. Ottawa, 21,000 to 30,000. Vancouver, BC, about 10,000 to 26,000 roughly. And then you got 2 American cities in San Antonio and Fort Worth, Texas, both growing from around 20,000 to like 22,000, so very little growth there. And then Halifax, Nova Scotia, from looks like about 18,000 to 19,000, so not a huge growth there. But 8 of the 10 are in Canada. Just goes to show you what they're doing with immigration here in Canada. It's hyper. The Liberal government has been hyper on inflation on immigration for the last bunch of years. Most of Toronto's spike can be attributed to rapid immigration, with the federal government increasing newcomer targets in the last few years, welcoming a record number to the country and pushing Canada's population to more than a staggering 41 million. And I know it doesn't sound very much when you think about the size, the landmass of Canada versus, let's say the States, which has like 330, 340 million people. But 41 million people in Canada when you take probably 3 or 4 sections of Canada being the most populated, the most densely populated, the GTA being one of them, the GTA area alone, essentially, I would try and, if I were to size it out comparatively, probably like the same size of like New York City, the New York City and surrounding area. You've got about 10 million people roughly, just in that small section of a very large province. So it's just 41 million is kind of deceptive. It sounds like not very much, but it is quite a lot when you factor about 25 to 30% is in the GTA area alone. Last year marked Canada's largest surge of inhabitants, a substantial 3.2% increase since the baby boom of 1957, stemming mostly from temporary immigration, according to StatCan. Without temporary immigration, that is, relying solely on permanent immigration and natural increase, births minus death, Canada's population growth would have been almost 3 times less, at plus 1.2%. In their cities report, TMU researchers noted that it is extraordinary how Canadian central cities and metropolitan areas outperform their American counterparts as far as growth of their citizen bases over the study's timeline, with the Great White North being home to 8 of the top 10 fastest growing places last year. They also state that major hubs in the US are actually losing residents, including LA and New York. Meanwhile, all of Canada's 48 metropolitan areas saw increases. What is surprising is the lack of awareness south of the border of how rapidly Toronto is becoming an economic powerhouse, mainly built on robust immigration from many countries. The article continues, adding that a whopping 49% of the GTA's population was born outside Canada at the time of the research. What they don't note in an article like this is the economic effect it has on housing and jobs and things like that. When you fast immigrate people into an area and you don't have the infrastructure set up for those new inhabitants, it poses a problem for the inhabitants that are currently there. In this case, the housing market. So traffic, there's a number of things that are going on here in Canada that make the GTA a bit of a nightmare to live in. If you do live in this area, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. If you don't, if you're just an Americano watching, appreciate, you just have to take my word for it. Or is it Justin just letting in the Chinese too? Yes, the Grand Theft Auto area. Yes, the Grand Theft Auto area, basically. Yeah, Justin loves his immigration. He likes to fill up the country with a bunch of new people and hopes to keep himself king leader for as long as possible. Unfortunately, I don't think it for him anyway. Unfortunately for him, I don't think it's going to work. I think we're looking at new government the next cycle around, but I hope so. I hope I'm right on that. If I'm wrong, well, I might be moving to the States. All right, let's get on the next thing here. This one you might not care about this one, Joe, but I'm going to talk about it anyway. All right. So, have you watched this show, Outlast, on Netflix? If you're checking this video out or this segment, I'm sure you probably know of it or looking it up at the very least, or you're curious. Either way, it's basically Survivor meets Alone. It's a competition of 16 people. 16 people, 4 teams that are competing for $1 million. And in order to win, you have to be part of a team, so you can't win individually, but you can win. I don't want to give anything away. I don't want to spoil it, but you can win with, I think, as little as 2 people. You have to be in a team. You just can't. And once you're alone, you have to join a team or you're done. I was giving the show quite a bit of a watch. I got through to, I think, about episode 6, and then it jumped the shark completely for me, and I had to drop it like a hot dumpster fire. Here's why. Here's an article by TV Guide. I'm going to read through. Spoiler alert right away. I'm going to basically give away. I'm not going to give away who won. I don't think, anyway. But I'm going to give away some parts of the show. So if you really don't want me to ruin it, maybe go watch the show, come back and watch what I have to say about it, and comment or whatever you want to do. But spoiler alert, here it comes. So Netflix Outlast, Jill and Javier discuss what really happened at that camp standoff. So As the mastermind of Alpha Team, so there were 4 teams. There was Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta. As the mastermind of Alpha Team, one of the 4 squads of 4 competitors whose goal was to survive as long as possible in the wilderness of Alaska with nothing but basic tools and their wits, Jill was directly involved in the most shocking moment of Outlast's first season and one of the most memorable standoffs in reality television. Weeks into the competition, with 2 other teams struggling, Alpha Team sprang into action, stealing the sleeping bags from Delta, a team of 2, no small crime given that nightmare temperatures in that area were dropping below 30 degrees, and raiding Bravo, a team of 1. This forced contestant Javier Colon to try to be in 2 places at once to protect his shelter or his raft, a crucial item for navigating the valley and getting food, while Jill and one of her teammates, Amber Assay, destroyed whichever item he couldn't protect. Alpha's team actions drew outrage and disbelief from other teams who had considered Outlast to be a test of survival skills and not ruthlessness. As exacerbated player Don Nelson, one of the victims of sleeping bag theft, said while watching Alpha stalk Javier, "This isn't about survival, it's about who's the fucking meanest." Depending on your viewpoint, it was either an act of extreme cruelty or fair play according to the series' incredibly lax rules. As Outlast's critics explain, the only listed rule is that competitors must be in a team to win, a mandate placed in order to drum up television-friendly drama from individuals used to working alone. So when it says that, this is what's irritating about this show. It says there's no rules, essentially. So you can just go ahead and steal off people and do whatever. But if you're gonna go with like lax rules, and you're gonna steal off people, which in society is illegal. Assault's also illegal, but in this case, assault should be just as legal as theft is. So if somebody's stealing from me and I catch them, I should be able to punch them in the face. But as you can see, if you've watched this, you'll know that none of that could happen or would happen. Or, if you're a decent individual, would you have done it anyway? I mean, but at the same time, it was just infuriating to watch. You'd have to take my word for it unless you've watched it. But for producers, letting things play out, even if it meant some teams used extreme measures as long as player safety was ensured, was vital to the spirit of the game. As much as Outlast was about who won, it was also about how the game was played. We wanted to keep the rules very vague, not vague, but very simple, because I wanted people to be able to do what they felt they needed to do to win. Executive producer Grant Collar told TV Guide, "Did I think it would go this far? No, of course I didn't. Collar assumed that safety was a primary concern and that interventions did happen if the crew, interventions did happen if the crew thought things were getting too heated between contestants. I don't agree with that. I don't think they did, because it was getting pretty heated at one point and they didn't seem to do anything. I thought it would have done the whole experiment a huge disservice to change the rules mid-game, Again, did we set a precedent that's unfair? I still don't think so, because I do think that's part of the game," he said. Excuse me. "If people were behaving badly or not treating each other with respect, I didn't feel it was my or the producer's place to change how people played." While Jill admits she came up, Jill is one of the goofs that were up to the misdeeds, we'll say. While Jill admits she came up with the plan to sabotage other teams, she never suggested stealing sleeping bags. She recommends grabbing an axe or the fire starter. Justin Court, the 3rd member of Alpha, came up with stealing the sleeping bags on his own in what is one of the funniest moments from the season, as Court fashioned his own makeshift ghillie suit and took the sleeping bags while Bravo was off scavenging. Jill was just as surprised as viewers were by Justin's actions. By the time I found out Justin came back with the sleeping bags, that was when it all sunk in. Like, oh my gosh, he went the extreme. He wiped them out. Perhaps emboldened by the success of Justin's mission and seeing easy prey, or maybe just because she didn't like Javier, Jill next set her sights on Bravo Camp, as Javier was the lone remaining member of that team, but Javier saw it coming and took action. So what had happened is Team Bravo with this Javier guy and another guy, I forget what his name was, Brian or something like that. Brian had decided in the morning he was going to quit. You quit by just shooting a flare up in the air and they come get you. So he was on his own. So he would have had to find a team to join. So they saw him as prey, I guess. I could tell that Justin, Jill, and Amber were terrible people when Brian and I first encountered them along the riverbank in front of their campsite as we were hiking towards the crab pots. Javier wrote to TV Guide, they actually suggested stealing all the crab pots to make things more difficult for the other teams. Immediately after that encounter, I warned then Bravo teammate Brian that they would likely be stealing our things next. To make that more difficult, Javier took action. I wrapped up our little shack with fishing nets to confuse Jill and Amber when they came in for an attack, and that's exactly what happened. Jill got frustrated by the nets, and she wasn't able to steal my personal items and sleeping bag before I caught up to her at my campsite. It was a moment that brought the game to a halt as Delta looked on from across the river. So what had happened, just some summary, 2 members from this Delta team were going to merge with this guy Javier from the Bravo team. And so they were in the midst of that. And this other team, the idiots from Alpha team, were messing with them to try and stop them from doing that. So it was a moment that brought the game to a halt as Delta looked on from across the river. Javier raced to his camp to protect his gear from Jill, while Amber beelined for Javier's raft. Jill and Javier had at it, with Javier calling Jill weak and a cheater, claiming she couldn't win the game how it was meant to be played, so she resorted to dangerous bullying tactics. Then Javier heard Dawn call out, "The bitch, Amber, is going for your raft," and Javier knew he was in a tough situation. As Jill sees it, ousting Javier by any means necessary was about saving her team, since Bravo and Alpha shared a side of the river. Javier's presence strained resources and kept game away, as if she was going to get game. She got a squirrel. Jill says she gave Javier the option to stay in the competition by abandoning his camp and heading to the other side of the river to join Charlie. She gave him the option, which she knew was a long shot due to her alliance with Charlie. Not wanting to leave anything for Jill and Amber, Javier made the decision to burn his camp to the ground in a statement that was as much about playing the game as it was about what he thought of Jill and Amber. Javier would end up leaving the game after Charlie, the team Charlie, rejected his request to join and get payback for Alpha's actions, although he really thinks he could have won the game if it weren't for Alpha. So that's all I'll read about it. It goes on a little bit more about what their opinions of each other were. But if you've watched this, I don't know, I think you probably would share my frustration, because in the real world, what they're trying to do here is they're trying to create like a Lord of the Flies sort of thing here. If you've ever read The Lord of the Flies, or you're familiar with it at the very least, you'll know that what happened was a bunch of kids got shipwrecked together on an island, and then they had to figure out how to build basically a society within themselves, and they chaos. Everything erupted to chaos, right? They were just trying to kill each other and all this stuff. Kind of what they suspect would happen to any society, any people that if society were to break down. Anyways, they were trying to kind of create that here, but what's irritating about it is you've got this idiot woman threatening this guy. I don't know. I live in the real world, and if that were happening outside of any kind of constraints of societal constraints, he'd probably just grab her and bend her in half. Like, you're going to come steal my stuff and try and essentially kill me by stealing my survival things, and I'm not going to defend myself. So it was just stupid. He's not acting in a way to defend himself properly, because he can't, because his hands are tied. But these idiots are just acting in any way they can. So it was ridiculous. It was just ridiculously set up. It was just very frustrating to watch. Now they're coming out with a season 2. I don't know how that's going to go, but I don't know. I was so frustrated. I just literally had to turn it off. I don't know what you think about this. If you know of this episode or you watched it yourself, let me know in the comments. I don't know if I'm going to go back to watch it, the leftover of it, but I may, just for curiosity, to see how it finishes, since I kind of know already. And then maybe give season 2 a try, just to see if they shored up some of this bullshit. But I don't know, man. It kind of went south for me really quick. TV Guide's a thing. Well, they still are a thing online, apparently. We're both old enough to remember when TV Guide, the actual guide, was a thing. But they've gone the way of the dodo with the actual guide, I think. But although I do know of people I've heard of people that collect the old TV guides, so I don't know. Maybe they actually still make them. I'm not sure. But yeah. Have you ever watched this show, Joe? Outlast? Do you watch any of these shows? Like, I watch Alone. I think they're on season 10 now, 10 or 11 or something. I've watched pretty much all of them. I think I've watched them all. Good shows. Like I really like Alone. The only thing I don't like, I'm not a big fan of the hunting, killing stuff, but life's life. I like animals, so I don't really like seeing that. But this one was just, I don't know. It started good. It started with a good premise. I thought, it was like a little bit hokey, as far as if you watched Alone, then you're like, well, one is there shooting their own camera footage. There's nobody there. You're technically full on alone, and this one is kind of like a Lord of the Flies meets Survivor. It was like I said, it was pretty all right until I guess it was episode 5 or 6, whenever all this shit happened. All right, let me get on to the next thing here. I'm gonna blast through this. No, I rarely watch TV. I spend most of my time viewing time on YouTube, Rumble, and Infowars. Yeah. I watch Netflix and Apple TV and stuff like that with the girlfriend, right? So she'll put stuff on and then I watch. So otherwise, yeah, I'm the same as you. Like my TV rarely goes on. It's just with the girlfriend, but yeah, it's Oh, you watched Fallout? Yeah, I watched part of Fallout. I played the game though, and the show was a little off for the game for me, and I don't know. I stopped watching. Not sure exactly. I didn't stop watching because I was like turned off. It was just a little bit. I think it took a little while to get into it, and maybe I just didn't give it a chance enough. But I'll probably go back to it. What I'm waiting for, I'll tell you. I'm waiting for Severance. If you haven't watched Severance, go watch Severance. Oh shit, that's my recommendation. I should do a whole segment of the podcast on that. Such a great show. When season 2 comes out, I'll probably do a thing on it. But it was so good. And we're waiting so long now because of the stupid writer strike. Chick was cute. Yeah, she was cute. You mean in Fallout? Yeah. All right, let me get on the next thing here. Already put it up. So AMD, the processor company, is now is doing a big acquisition to, bolster their position in the AI sphere. I'm going to read this article here. This is Reuters. Reuters is pretty good for this kind of stuff, so I like to go to them for the technology stuff and the business related stuff. So AMD to acquire server builder ZT Systems for $4.9 billion in cash and stock. AMD said on Monday it plans to acquire server maker ZT Systems for $4.9 billion as the company seeks to expand its portfolio of artificial intelligence chips and hardware and battle NVIDIA. AMD plans to pay for 75% of the ZT Systems acquisition with cash and the remainder in stock. The company had $5.34 billion in cash and short-term investments as of the second quarter. Computing requirements for AI have dictated that tech companies string together thousands of chips and clusters to achieve the necessary amount of data crunching horsepower. Stringing together the vast numbers of chips has meant the makeup of whole server systems has become increasingly important, which is why AMD is acquiring ZT Systems. AI systems are our number one strategic priority, AMD CEO Lisa Su said in an interview with Reuters. The addition of ZT Systems engineers will allow AMD to more quickly test and roll out its latest AI graphics processing units, or GPUs, at the scale cloud computing giants such as Microsoft require. The main way ZT Systems is additive to the company is we sell more GPUs. AMD shares rose more than 2%, while NVIDIA rose 1.4%. So the AMD stock went up today 4.52% just today alone. And you can see year to date here. Year to date, they're up 12%, which is not bad. You can see they're on an upward trajectory now after that little tank ski over the last little bit on tech stocks. But now they're on the upward move. So this might be a nice time to buy. Again, I'm not recommending you buy anything. Don't listen to me. I don't know shit about stocks. But take a look. Look for yourself. No doubt this gives them much stronger lock-in with their data center customers, and because of that, the acquisition is a net positive for their long-term revenue strategy, said Creative Strategy CEO Ben Pajarin. AMD plans to break off its server manufacturing business and sell it once the deal closes, as it has no plans to compete with companies such as Supermicro Computer. AMD has not yet held talks with potential buyers. ZT Systems chief executive Frank Zhang will join AMD and report to AMD's data center chief Boris Narod. Closely held, ZT Systems has roughly 2,500 employees, and AMD said it plans to retain about 1,000 of them. Oh, that sucks for 1,500 people. Sorry about your jobs there, peeps. Which will result in about $150 million in annualized operating expenses. Currently, ZT Systems generates annual revenue of roughly $10 billion, most of which is derived from its manufacturing unit. Executives expect the deal to close in the first half of 2025 and expect an additional 12 to 18 months to sell the manufacturing business. AMD said it expects the deal to contribute to its adjusted financial performance by 2025 end. CFO John Hu said the minor dilution from the deal in the first year after closing in 2025 would be offset by greater sales of graphics processor units, creating a break-even effect for the deal. 2026, the acquisition will accelerate revenue growth. The sale of the ZT Systems manufacturing business will have no impact on AMD in the long run. Chan added the deal could help expand its business catering to cloud customers. Having more engineers helps. NVIDIA CEO Jensen Huang said at the company's developer conference in March that the one-time chip designer now creates and sells entire data centers, or the individual components needed to build one. This year, analysts expect the company to generate $105.9 billion from its data center segment, which includes chips and other AI hardware. The company expects to collect roughly $4.5 billion worth of AI chip revenue this year. Company customers include Microsoft and Meta platforms. So it's these companies are doing some big moves, man. I'll tell you, they're creating these massive companies that are kind of scary. Almost like if you ever watched Terminator, get the name of the company that was the big company in that. It's like these tech giants are going to be the ones on the forefront, and who's going to stop them? They get massive. Look at Apple. Just Apple, the rise of Apple in the last bunch of years. Imagine if AI starts taking over crazily. What companies like AMD or NVIDIA and stuff are going to be worth? It's crazy. They're going to they'll own like 15% of the total market share of all businesses, all companies in the world, basically. So yeah, Skynet. There you go. Thanks, Joe. So we're looking at Skynet evolved. Got a hard time clicking the off button there. Yeah, scary stuff, man. I'll tell you. This I don't know what to think about these big companies doing this big stuff in the AI sphere. It's like, how do you stop them? They're in a market that has so much upside, and monopoly laws aren't being really exercised at this point, unless it suits governments to do so. So, what do you do? What do you do when these? And imagine if you get a big merger. Imagine if, let's just say, like, NVIDIA and Microsoft merge. What are you going to do? They have the money to control everything. So it's scary stuff. So what are you saying here? So AMD is underrated. They make quality products and just get lost by Apple, NVIDIA, and Intel, but they're better than two of those currently, in my opinion. I agree. My first chip was an AMD chip in my first IBM computer. In the next year or two, I'm going to build an AMD system unless something changes with Intel and NVIDIA. Yeah. I had no problem with the chip, the AMD chip. It was what was it? It was a P4. No, it was a P2 486 with an AMD chip in my first computer. Something like P2. Yeah, I think P2 486 or something like that. The first one it was the first one I bought, and the second one I built, and I built with an AMD chip as well. I can't remember what the second one was, but I just bought a hardware case and built it back when I was ambitious enough to do that. Now I just buy laptops because they're easy. I agree. If you can build a computer, if you have the time and the energy and all that to do it, I agree with you. I think it's smart. I think you do better. You can get a lot more computing power, especially if you're doing things that need it. For me, I don't really. I mean, I need as much computing power as a podcast will allow in some of my business things need me to do. So, all right, that's it. That's all I got for today. We're at 55 minutes anyway, so we're in good time. Joe, as always, thanks for being with me, buddy. And there was some other viewers concurrently, but nobody got into the chat. So if you were here and you just didn't chat, thanks for being here with me. Next time, get in the chat so I know you're here, and we can discuss what your ideas are on things. If you are watching and you aren't yet a subscriber, hit that subscribe, obviously, hit the like, all that kind of stuff, engagement, comment, share. If you missed any part of the podcast and you want to catch it, you can catch me during the week from Tuesday to Sunday, depending if I drop all 6 segments. I usually do 6 segments. I drop them at 5 Eastern, and you can share those, like them, comment, all that kind of stuff. Help with the engagement on the small channel. And all that kind of stuff, all that jazz. You know the jazz. It's the same routine. It's the same stuff I talk about every time. Thanks for joining. I will be here next week, but I won't be here the following week. So look for me next week, Monday, 7 o'clock as usual, Eastern. And I will, I'll do what I do. What are you saying here, Joe? I have a way overpowered system just because I can, and just in case I want to try new stuff. Yeah, well, that's the best. If you ever put a game in your computer or something like that and it doesn't work right, it's so frustrating. But so I don't blame you, buddy. I would too if I were a big gamer or anything like that. But again, I don't really do that stuff. Thanks, Joe. Thank you, everyone else. Until I see you on the next show, take care.